Hello, hello, everybody. I've decided not to continue with our Cursed England game. Instead, we're playing as one of my favorite countries to cover the history of, Russia, or rather, as it was in 1444, the Grand Duchy of Muscovy. Now, a bit about Muscovy, or Proto Russia, when this started. So, in the medieval era, most of Russia, which included a lot of what is in this time period southern Lithuania, was part of a giant Proto-Slavic superstate called the Kievan Rus, and that is what modern Russia traces its origins all the way back to. But when the Mongols came in and kind of ruined everything for the Russians, it eventually the Mongols lost control of the various Russian principalities that they had vassalized. Muscovy emerged as the leading one, mostly because it controlled the key trade city of Moscow, which was a favorite of the Mongols. It became one of their major trading posts. Now, in 1444, Moscow has more or less united the smaller Russian principalities under its rule. You have Rostov, Yaroslav, Perm, and Pskov. Ryazan and Odoviev remain independent, and then Novgorod up here is our main rival. So let's go in there and set up Novgorod, Lithuania, and Denmark. The Scandinavians were one of the other major problems for the Russians in this time period. We'll also want to seize some crown land. That's kind of what everyone has to do when they start. And we're playing with our standard paradox missions. Oh, I need to pick those. And yeah, let's get started. Yeah, we're going to go with the regular paradox missions. So, Russia at the start. We are going to want to deal with Novgorod. The problem is we need Poland and Lithuania to form a union, otherwise our life gets more difficult. That's fine. But if Poland and Lithuania don't form that union, then we're gonna be stuck fighting Novgorod that usually allies itself with Lithuania. Dealing with them together can be a problem. Income is a-okay. Okay, good. They've formed a union, which means an alliance with Novgorod is unlikely. Poland is not particularly interested in anything going on up here, at least not yet. Let's Royal marry all our vassals. Except for Pskov, which is a republic, so we're going to need to focus on them first. Royal marriage will not work on them, so we will definitely want to focus on getting their allegiance other ways. Yeah, it's ours. Apparently, this is a new unskippable event they've added to Russia. Got this in a private Russian game I was playing this week, and that happened, and I guess it's just something you can't avoid now if you're playing Muscovy. Just kind of a pain in the ass, but it is what it is. At the very least, Novgorod has no allies, which is very good for us. Because the sooner we destroy Novgorod, the sooner we can, start doing Russia stuff, like conquering Siberia. This is going to be painful, isn't it? The England curse must have followed us. I don't really want to irritate my vassals here. At the very least, he has started besieging Nizhny Novgorod, which historically was Russia's outpost, or Muscovy's outpost, against the steppe hordes further east. There, my vassals are finally helping out. What is going on here? It's the prestige again. Oh well. Oh, great. Great, great, great. Yeah, the England curse definitely followed us. I never have luck like this when I'm playing on my own. It figures it would only happen while I'm doing a stream. Well, there's only one of you in here, so I'm going to restart. Because apparently my streams are cursed. Switching things up, I'm drinking some Maker's Mark tonight, so we're doing a Russia game, but drinking American liquor. Please ignore my disgusting inbox. Yeah, for those who just joined, we had to restart because the England curse followed us. We're doing a Muscovy into Russia game because they're one of my favorite countries to play, and they have a very interesting history in this period because this is when Russia emerged as what we know as Russia. It emerges as a world power in this period. Just some early housekeeping. If you're Muscovy, you always rival Novgorod, and you hope to God Poland and Lithuania form their union because otherwise, Novgorod almost inevitably allies with Novgorod, and fighting them both at the same time in the early game is painful, to say the very least. And there's the rebellion. I am glad I got my men out of there. Great. It's okay, it's okay. We'll put our king in here, and hopefully actually no, we don't want to attack across a river. We have low prestige. Oh, we don't have low prestige. All right, this run's already looking up. Or not. Come on. Yeah, whatever curse afflicted the England game, it's definitely following me. Because I literally did a personal Russia playthrough this week that went fine. Went fine. I don't know what I did to irritate RNGesus, but he does not like me lately. Okay, we outnumber him now. Might be able to do it. Or not. Wonderful. They're at war, go figure. Alright, have we got any mercenaries? Maybe we can use some mercenaries. Let's go with you guys. I'll go into debt. I don't care. Please ignore my dog. Okay, maybe with some mercenaries helping us out. Alright, we outnumber them again. What is going on here? This... Oh, mother of God. This is cursed. That's my only explanation. Yeah, my vassals are going to declare independence, and there's not much I can do about it. That's wonderful. What in hell? You cannot be serious. Well, we gotta keep trying until they're gone. Yeah, I'll take that admin power. I'm probably gonna need it. Yeah, we need all the help we can get with our vassals. And now they outnumber us. Great! Don't... You know what? Alright, third time's the charm. Third time is the charm. Trust me, this isn't frustrating at all. I when I played my personal game, I knocked out that rebel army in one go. That's all it took. But the England curse decided to follow us. For this event, looks like never used to be a thing in the Russia playthroughs. Some of them do, like the Protestant Reformation will always happen. Um, this is a new one they added for Russia that I really don't like at all. Once we deal with, we'll get past this, and once we deal with it, then we can do some Russia history, which is fascinating. I tried to do a series on it, and I might actually return to it when when I finish with the Decline of Rome series. Okay, get everybody together. Seize Crown Land. Rival Denmark, Lithuania, Novgorod. Everything together. Need a leader, and he's going to rebel against us, so we don't really want to use him. Maybe we can get an advisor. Nope. Get some additional men. Paradox missions. Watch, this will be the time it doesn't happen. Alright, we can start with these guys. So in this time period, where we are after this is roughly after the Russians finally broke away from the Tatar yoke, as it was called, which was the basically vassalage to the Mongols. Not a bright spot in Russian history, although it did shelter them somewhat from external threats and allowed Muscovy to grow into a regional trade power. And Moscow is there it is. All right. Maybe we can roll for a better general. All right, he is better. Okay. It's fine. We'll be fine. We do not want to attack across a river. We need every advantage we can get in this, apparently. Right. That's fine. Get some money. Bring everybody back down to Moscow. Oh, that was easy. Okay, we got that now. So all we gotta do is put down this rebellion and we can start doing Russia stuff. We're gonna need that prestige. Oh no, we want to hold off. Let's hold off. We'll go into more debt. It's never hurt any country before. Okay. Just gotta deal with these rebels, and we ought to be all set. I just need them to hold still for a few. Almost. There we go. Okay. We're making progress. Once I've liberated those provinces, shouldn't be too hard to finish them off. Alright, hopefully this will be it. That's the thing with pretender rebels, is you have to hunt them down a lot of the time. But they're dealt with, so we can delete these mercenaries, split this unit in half, and now we gotta wait for our manpower to restore. But soon we'll be able to do Russia stuff. Unless this happens. That would be fantastic. Oh well, we'll train, we'll wait. This is a Russia game. It's a long game. You start off a little weak, but you end up a global superpower by the end. Besides, we got some loans to pay back. Novgorod friends with anybody? Okay, Odofiev, so shouldn't be too hard to deal with Novgorod once we get going. There used to be a thing you could do with the estates. I don't know if you can still do it. Boyars, let's see if we can get some manpower out of them. Doesn't look like it. Used to be able to get free manpower out of your nobility. Guess they got rid of it. Which is a shame. It really, really would help right now. Might be able to delay this. Okay, looks like we're not making progress towards it anymore. So we can hold that off. Alright, so while the manpower is restoring, I will tell you about where Russia finds itself in the 15th century. So we're coming off of the period of the Tatar yoke, which is when the Mongols came in and ruined everybody's day in this part of the world. And, well, pretty much the entire rest of the world, too. The Mongols liked ruining people's day. But Muscovy and modern day Russia trace their lineage all the way back to a proto-Slavic state that existed, well, an early Slavic state that existed in this rough region called the Kievan Rus, which was based around the city of Kiev, which is currently occupied by the dirty Lithuanians over here. We're going to deal with them, we're going to deal with everybody, but when the Kievan Rus fell during the Mongol invasion, Russia split into various principalities. Most of those are under the control of Moscow at the start of the game. We have Rostov, Yaroslavl, Pskov, and Perm. And then Novgorod was spared the Mongol invasion and became a very rich merchant republic in the medieval era. Um, they actually fought a battle against a bunch of crusading Germans on a frozen lake. Actually, this exact frozen lake, Lake Peipus, over here, between Russia and Estonia and Latvia. That's a cool one. There's a so. All right, fine. We'll give the nobles some increased pensions. But south of us are the remains of the once great Mongol Empire. So yeah, there were lots of principalities, and we'll see our actual leader here is called the Grand Knyaz, which is a Russian word that roughly translates to prince. Um, South of us, though, are the remnant states of the Mongol Empire that's splintered. The Great Horde is the direct successor, but you also have the Khanates of Kazan and Nogai. You have the Circassians down here, who are Orthodox Christians. Might be worth outlining them for right now, actually. And of course, everybody's favorite, the Ottomans, who are kind of gonna be my final boss this game. Which they kind of were for Russia. Russia, as it grew, kind of ate into their influence in the Caucasus and Crimea. Crimea was part of the Ottoman Empire, but they lost it to the Russians eventually, and the Russians almost retook Constantinople. They might have been able to had it not been for the British and French intervening in the Crimean War, which is still one of the most pointless deployments of British troops I think I've ever heard of. I mean, they got pointlessly deployed a lot of places, but I don't know why the British felt any need to protect the Ottomans. I know they were uh, involved in the Great Game with Russia at that point, but and well, the Ottomans were far weaker than the Russians. So that might have been it too. Yeah, we'll send them some administrators. And there goes Denmark. Yeah, the at the start of the game, the Teutonic Order and their sisters order, the Livonian Order, are not long for this world. The Livonians almost always get absorbed by Denmark, and the Teutonic Order always gets eaten by Poland, except for the rare occasion where Poland appoints a local noble, and then the Teutonic Order stands a chance. That said, usually they'll still get eaten up by Poland. Um, and Denmark is kind of a powerhouse we got to watch out for early in the game because they have Norway and Sweden as parts of their personal union, which is the Kalmar Union, which was a problem for Russia early in its history. But once Peter the Great really focused his efforts on expanding westward and defeated the Swedes, especially at the Battle of Poltava, it was all over. The Scandinavians were never able to match Russia for manpower, for uh, resources. The only thing the Swedes really had going for them was brilliant leadership at the top. Looks like my stream is paused. There we go. Anyway, yeah, the only thing they really had going for them was a couple of great kings that managed to turn Sweden into a legitimate empire. There was once a time where Sweden controlled pretty much the entire Baltic coast, and were just abusing everybody in Europe. All right, the Ottomans have eaten the Byzantines, which is also kind of feeds into Russia's claim as being the third Rome, which there are lots of countries that claim to be that. Um, some other people have done the math on it, and somehow Finland has a claim on being the third Rome. All right, dead king, wonderful. But our queen is decent, and we have a very good heir, who I think is he. I think that's Ivan the Terrible. I'm not quite sure. Which, that's the other thing. Ivan the Terrible gets a bad rap because of his name. Uh, it's really a case of bad translation. Um, the Russian word much more means fearsome rather than terrible as in bad. But it gets translated to terrible, which has the connotation of negativity in English. I know a couple phrases in Russian. I studied it for a little while, but I had to stop because the lack of interest, which is a huge bummer because I loved that class. I do have a bit of an affinity for Russian culture, I must admit. It's sort of this. I mean, Winston Churchill put it right when he said Russia is an enigma wrapped inside a mystery. Russia is the meeting point between East and West. It kind of fulfilled a similar role to the Byzantines in medieval history, where it's this meeting point between Asia and Europe. It's neither Asian nor is it truly European. The Russians exist on the borderlines of culture groups. And because of that, they've never really fit in fully with either one. In some periods of their history, they behaved more like Khans, and in other periods of their history, they behaved like European monarchs. It really depended on who was leading the country and when. Now, throughout Russian history, there's this gradual transition towards being more Western, and that really kicks off fully with Peter the Great. But the Russians never quite shake this connection to the East that they have either. So they were always kind of stuck as an in-betweener in global politics. So they usually found themselves diplomatically isolated until World War One, when France realized the Germans were a significantly larger threat to them than the Russians could ever be. Uh, Napoleon's stupid voyages to Moscow aside. Yeah, it doesn't matter how many times someone tries it. Invading Russia in winter is a bad idea. It's one of the only things high school history students actually take away from their classes. It's a good lesson, but unless you're in command of an army, not one you'll ever need to use. But I don't know what high schoolers get up to these days. Maybe invading Russia is one of their favorite pastimes. One thing I've noticed as I've gotten deeper into my 20s is I relate less and less to the young people. And that's the horrifying realization that I'm getting old. Alright, we can start paying back our loans soon. Yeah. I would love it. It would be kind of funny if invading Russia became a TikTok trend. I know that sentence probably just put me on like an FSB list or something like that, but whatever. Yeah. Not ancient, but getting there. Starting to get older. And I accidentally recruited two generals. I look at some of these things that I see on TikTok and I don't get it. I'm not supposed to get it. You kids do what you're gonna do. Can't really fight any noble rebels right now. We're gonna unify Russia is what we're gonna do. But still need a bit more manpower to do that. So during downtime, you'll get to hear all of my history rambling. And we should be able to start annexing Pskov soon. Yep, there we go. See, the other thing I think every high school history student learns but doesn't learn is that you can't just keep printing money, but somehow we forget that because every time it's been tried, it doesn't work. But those are the only two history lessons I think most people ever walk away from high school with, and they end up forgetting one of them. So it's don't invade Russia in winter is the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell of history. That's the thing that they always remember. They don't know why they remember it, but they remember it. Did I read that right? Oh, we got an awesome heir. This is great. Okay, still they're only friends with Odoviev, and we have our vassal Swarm. So, Novgorod, I'm coming for you. All right, Poland's a rival now. That's fine. They were Russia's rivals historically. Um, the problem is Russia had all of this that it could go back into and get resources from, and Poland was kind of stuck, surrounded by a bunch of nations that didn't like them a whole lot. And with no defensible terrain, that story wrote itself. Alright, repay that one. We can't repay that one. Once we get enough manpower, we can get some money and just take that out of Novgorod. But, alright. Do I have the prestige to? I don't. Hmm. Alright, we're going to Royal marry you. That should help. Alright, there we go. We gotta watch Perm. They're our biggest vassal. But once we can actually fight Novgorod, should be relatively easy to deal with them. And I know we're a bit short on manpower, but Perm wanting to be free makes me nervous. So we're gonna just deal with them now. The Novgorodian army is nothing you need to worry about as a Moscow player. And we'll start rolling in money once we get access to the Baltic Sea. That's one of the other things. Is starting as Moscow, you're landlocked, and being landlocked is a major disadvantage. As much that, even more so than it is today. I mean, today you have air travel. Back then, if you didn't have access to the sea, you were toast in terms of international trade. Sorry, I forgot about Odoyev. And what's going on with Ryazan? Alright, I can get at them through Tver. Yeah, once you deal with Novgorod, the rest of the Russian principalities fall pretty quickly. Alright, what do we want to take? Let's go for Torzhok. That's something we can take pretty easily. Alright, leave that siege as it is. Nobody's going to come down there. Let our vassals do their thing up here, and we can focus in on Novgorod proper. Also, I still appreciate that you guys probably can't hear my game audio. I think I've figured out what the problem is. I just need more USB ports to fix it. So it's not something that'll happen this week. Maybe next week. Both Perm and Peskov. This is painful. Alright, hopefully this war deals with it. We do not want them getting south and killing our guys near Odoyev. Alright, there we go. You lot come up here. They're occupying Perm, that's whatever. Alright, if I can annex Odoyev, that'd be great. Alright, they're not gonna let me do that. I will need to occupy more of Novgorod before I can get away with that. Should be coming soon. This siege is going well, and I will join these men at Novgorod very soon. Historically, these wars didn't last as long as they do in-game. Paradox made it a lot easier to play Novgorod by kind of nerfing Muscovy, especially if it's AI controlled. AI controlled Russian rarely does all that well, but under the hands of a player, Russia is like a world conquest tier nation. Alright, that worries me, but we'll deal with it. Yeah, the England curse definitely followed us, but I think we'll be able to fix this. I don't want that peace deal because it can annex Odoyev in this war, and I want to. Because the sooner... There we go. Can I get any money out of it? Because the sooner you unite the Russian principalities, the better, as Muscovy. Alright, there we go. We got some money, got a new province. As we get more powerful, it will get way easier to deal with our vassals. And I'm not too worried about that territory they're occupying out there. There's nothing out there. It's the undeveloped frontier, so they can occupy it. I hold their capital now, so this war should be over soon. Once I've taken over southern Novgorod, I'll send my armies to deal with them. I also want to give the province down there some time to integrate, or I want to give myself some time to core it, because the meme is that overextension is just a number, but in reality, overextension sucks. It can ruin your playthrough if you're not careful, especially early on. I get why they did it. It's meant to limit your expansion in the early game and make the game last longer. Let me see how much of Novgorod I can get. But it makes life difficult. Very difficult. Alright, I can take a really good chunk of them. Alright, yeah, at full occupation, I can absorb most of Novgorod and stop the Danes from getting at it, which is another problem you got to worry about if you're Russia. If the Danes get to Novgorod before you, your playthrough's basically over, because you need to absorb Novgorod before you can go do Russia things. But once you do absorb Novgorod, Denmark stops being a threat, really. Alright, they're gonna beat me there, but I think I've already won pretty much. Yeah, we're at 97% war score. And there goes Perm. Alright, should be able to take it now. Do I want to leave him some land and take more money? I'll take the land. Yeah, definitely taking the land. Alright, here we go. Do Russia things like conquering people, annexing Siberia, getting really big, painting the map. I've seen people do world conquest with Russia. They are a serious powerhouse in this game, and most of that is due to the Orthodox religion, which is mechanically the most powerful in the game. Religious ideas, if you're in Western Europe, are not particularly useful, but if you're an Orthodox country, religious ideas are very worth it. Um, you can turn yourself into sort of like the Empire from Warhammer. You can just wage holy crusades on everybody. I'll take some money from the burghers. There's Pskov integrated. Alright, they didn't have an army, but that's fine. Alright, now we can focus on Perm. And once they're annexed, then we're really cooking with sunflower seed oil. Alright, now we're a great power. Okay, so Ryazan and Tver are up next. We don't want to attack Ryazan directly because they're a tributary of the Great Horde, even though the Great Horde isn't much of a threat to us at this point. Alright, we'll take the manpower hit for now. And send one of our spies to build a spy network in Tver. Yeah, both them and Ryazan are easy this early. Austria is at war with Wallachia for some reason. Austria and did they get no? Oh, there they go. Yeah, Austria's got Hungary in a union. Austria can be an ally to you, as Russia. They help with the Ottomans, but only really by providing a distraction. The Austrian army in this game, as it was historically, is kind of useless. One of my favorite stories about the sheer might of the Austro-Hungarian military is they once waged a battle with themselves, during which a few thousand men died. Yeah, we'll take that. And they just launched artillery at each other for a while until they realized, hey, aren't those guys wearing the same color uniform as we are? And I hope some people got fired over that one, but part of the reason the Germans lost World War One, they had to keep covering for the Austro-Hungarians. Not too worried about Novgorodian separatism, because when you form an empire, you get a cultural union of your culture group, which in our case is East Slavic, which is all of the light blue here. This. So once we do that and get the cultural union, all of those cultures become accepted, which means they don't really provide us, they don't really give us any negatives. And that's very good, especially if you're Russia, you're always going to have to deal with a bunch of different cultures in your territory. Um, that's actually something Religious Ideas helps with. Is it gives you a reduction in your cultural conversion cost. Another reason Russia's super powerful, you have these Russian abilities that no other country, no other culture group has access to. You can raise Streltsy units, use the Oprichniks to put down revolts, and you can reform the Sudebnik, which gives you less autonomy in your provinces. And Streltsy were a historical thing. They were a special military unit used by the Tsars, at least until the rise of the Romanovs. Um, Eventually, they led a revolt and all had to be put down. And they were abolished by the new uh, Romanov dynasty shortly after they came to power. Is that everything? Almost got everything integrated. Yep, there we go. All right, pay back that last, almost pay back that last loan, and then we should be doing pretty good for this run. We still got our treaty to worry about, but we can start fabricating claims on Tver. See, the other another thing the Russian government can do is form claims on entire states. Nobody else can do that. You have to go province by province. This is part of the problem with a lot of Paradox games is when they roll out a DLC that's specifically focused on one country or one area, that country or area usually gets overpowered, at least until the next update. The weird exception here was what they did to Austria. They kind of made Austria more difficult. All right, what we're gonna do is we're gonna end up using the Streltsy as our infantry for the most part, because they do more fire damage than just regular infantry. So they're an improvement in pretty much every way. And the drawback, which I believe is increased stability cost, is totally worth it because it's negligible. And if you're smart with your stability, it shouldn't be too hard to work around. I want no part in that conflict. Let the Danes do what they're gonna do. We're gonna conquer them all soon enough. Okay. Alright, got some pretenders. More pretenders. I mean, true. That's some. My understanding is that's a pretty exploity trick. I mean, you can do it. I was mostly referring to the fact that for whatever reason, since the 1.3 patch, they don't really. I don't ever see the Burgundian inheritance happen, and when it does happen, France gets everything. So seems like they kind of weakened Austria a little bit. Yeah, that's what I thought. Um, yeah, we're gonna want that Renaissance support. One of the one of the negatives of playing Russia is you'll almost never get institutions, and they take a while to get to you. Particularly things like colonialism and uh, world trade, which almost always will spawn in Spain or England, sometimes the Netherlands if the Netherlands form. I don't see that happen all that much anymore either. Again, because Burgundy, for whatever reason, stays independent a lot longer in this patch, and that usually stops the Netherlands from happening, really. Alright, let's pay back that loan. We're making some decent income. And once our manpower comes back, then we can deal with Tver. And we should be able to start integrating Perm, because I do not want them declaring independence. It's going to take a while, but we're not in any particular rush, because until we've united the Russian principalities, there's really no sense going too hard after Kazan or the Great Horde, because our own power base wouldn't be all that secure. But back to history. So once Russia really unites under the Grand Duchy of Muscovy, that's when it starts expanding southward into the Great Steppes. Yeah, we want to keep the nobility happy, and it's there that the you see the Cossacks show up, and the Cossacks who live in this region were a kind of a bridge between Slavic culture and Mongol culture. They were horse nomads, but they were horse nomads that followed the Orthodox Christian Church and who were largely ethnically Slavic. So they were a rather useful tool for Russia as it expanded, because most of Siberia was settled by Cossacks. Actually, one of the most famous Cossacks, Yermak Timofeyevich, was the man who really struck out into Siberia for the Tsar. He was sort of think like a Russian version of Hernan Cortez or something like that. All right, I am going to go with religious because almost all you're doing as Russia is expanding into Muslim and Catholic territory, and that will destroy your religious unity very quickly. Lost great power status. Who took it? England. Okay, yeah, they're starting to eat Scotland. Danzig is looking beefy. Are they a Polish vassal? Yeah, they are. All right, they're not long for this world unless they declare independence, which they might do. But yeah, Russia's always a little slow on tech in this game. Yes, you can. You can get him as a named explorer in the mission tree, but that's who he was historically. Was the Cossack dispatched by the Tsar into Siberia, and people think of Siberia as just this vast, empty wasteland to the east of the Ural Mountains, but it really wasn't. There are lots of native tribes in Siberia that Timofeyevich and successive Cossacks and other Russian explorers had to fight with brutally to subjugate the region. Um, they just were not particularly numerous, and mostly they just kept going eastward to try to get away from the Russians until they hit the Pacific Ocean. A lot of them are still out there. A lot of those tribes still exist. Um, and it's an interesting thing about Russia's ethnic history is the Russians tended to settle along the rivers, whereas the native tribes of Siberia and the steppe tended to live out in the hinterlands. So they weren't really competing for the same territory, and they had very different lifestyles. So it was relatively peaceful. Relatively. They did fight a lot, but if you compare it to what happened in the Americas with the Spaniards or the English, it was much better. And the other thing that the Tsar does that allows the Russian monarchy to keep things stable in their huge ethnic and religiously diverse empire is they give a lot of autonomy to individual ethnic groups and religious groups. So the Russian Empire contained huge amounts of Muslims, but the Tsar never made any concerted effort to force Orthodox Christianity onto them. Yeah, we want that institution spread. Um, so they never had much reason to fight against him. As long as they paid their taxes to the Tsar, things were usually going to be okay. Um, and actually, during the Russian Civil War, a lot of the White Army, and the White Army was made up of monarchists, liberals, conservatives, and pretty much anybody who wasn't a communist. And they had huge numbers of Russia's Muslim population serving in the White Army, alongside the monarchists, because they had nothing against the Tsar because he didn't try to take their religion away. All right, we can start stating some of this. That'll really start boosting our income. Core that, and now we should be making some decent money. There we go. All right, and once my morale is back up, then we can get back to expanding. All right, just Tver and Ryazan shouldn't be too hard to deal with, especially because we still kind of have our vassal swarm. All right, I will let them besiege the city so we don't kill our manpower. Send a unit down here to Yelets. And the interesting thing about Russia geographically is that even though they've expanded so far to the east, this remains the core of Russian civilization. Um, Something like 70% of the population lives in this rough region, even though the country it's the largest country on Earth. Just almost everybody who is in Russia lives in the old core of Russia. Um, Mostly because Siberia was interesting. It's Russia is, along with the U.S. and Australia, one of the world's great frontier cultures. Um, if you were a kid in Moscow with no prospects whatsoever, go out to Siberia, find your fortune. And that was kind of the idea. And Siberia was actually a relatively wealthy region up until the Communist Revolution because there were a lot of independent farmers out there because the Russian government liked having independent farmers go out into Siberia and farm it. Um, Unfortunately, most of them were ended up being killed by the communists as kulaks, which is pretty much any landowner who had even a small plot. Um, but Siberia also is has more recently been Russia's natural resource store because Russia is sitting atop, I think, the world's largest reserves of oil and natural gas, among other things. The main reason Russia isn't really what it used to be is communism. The Soviets destroyed what probably would have been the third tent pole of a three pole global order between Russia, the U.S., and China. Um, sure, the Soviet Union was a world power, but it still damages Russia's economy even today. Um, it's part of the state-run businesses really lended themselves to being controlled by oligarchs after the fact. And that's the main problem with Russia today is you have a handful of Russians who control the entirety of the country's industry. So, yeah, there is wealth in the country, but it's entirely concentrated in a very small group of people. You think income inequality is bad in Western countries? It is way worse in Russia and actually a lot of Eastern Europe. And in large part, that's due to communism. It centralized things, and after the fall of the Soviet Union, a lot of those state run businesses went to cronies in the new government. But who knows what the future holds, and Russians are nothing if not resilient. This is going to take a while. Oh, there we go. Alright, we're back to it. Yeah. I don't really care what the Lithuanians think of us. We're going to go to war with them eventually anyway. That is one of the weirdest things I think a lot of people who aren't familiar with history who start playing EU4, they see that Lithuania is looking pretty beefy there. That's because there were a few Lithuanian warlords who, after, well, partially during the time when they were still pagans and partially during their conversion to Christianity, a number of Lithuanian warlords just kind of decided to go conquer everything to their south, and they formed this enormous empire, basically. Um, which is there was a brief time when Lithuania was the largest, most powerful country in Eastern Europe. Okay, get those going. Yeah, coring this is going to take a little while. These tinier states were more developed than a lot of Novgorod's territory, and we've got a little bit before that truce is up anyway. Yeah, we've got about 3 years before the Novgorod truce is up, and we want to let our manpower recover because we want to avoid the Peasants' War. So, no war for a little while. Just means more history rambling. Let's see what's going on in the rest of Europe. Spain has, for whatever reason, decided to let Grenada. Oh, there they go. No, they're killing them. Portugal grabbed Gibraltar in a very cheeky move that should actually weaken Spain a little bit moving forward. Um, France is still working to get everything back together. It's weird. These tiny states in Western Europe, you see a lot of weird alliances. Yeah, we'll take that Patriarch authority. What's Austria up to? All right, they got the Hungarian Union, which means the Ottomans should be checked in the Balkans. Ooh, Bosnia's looking good. Allied with Serbia. That you don't see that every day. Um, Serbia has this one little exclave that used to be part of Croatia, and silly took a second province. Look at them. Look at you little Slovenes go. I've never seen them be more than a one province minor since they were introduced. Alright, we should be almost at 50%. Yeah, couple more months, and then all risk of that war should go away. Alright, there we go. Disaster's gone. We should still probably let more manpower come back, and we have truces anyway. I'm not really going to bother with the Muslim territories until we get some of religious ideas underway. Plus, we got rebels to deal with. And we should probably try to tech up once or twice more. How's Renaissance coming along? Yeah, that one takes a while for Russia. So does colonialism. A lot of the early ones, the later ones aren't so bad. Like printing press tends to get to us relatively quickly. Um, Manufactories we can usually get relatively early. And if you play it right, Enlightenment and industrialization can come along pretty fast as well. Got some rebels out in Perm. Move you guys down here. I think up next is going to be Belo Ozero. I can't pronounce that worth a damn, but that's going to be next because them these two are such low development they wouldn't be able to rebel even if they wanted to. And if you're new to the game, I would if and you want to learn the vassal management, I would recommend France or Muscovy. Those are two really great countries for learning how the mechanic works. Because I think between the two of them, they start with more vassals than anybody else in the game, at least in Europe. And if you're new, I would recommend Europe over Asia in particular. Asia has a lot of powerful countries, but you should learn how the mechanics work before you play them because uh, Europe's easier because you have the institutions right there. You don't really have to worry too much about falling behind in technology. Um, as long as you're playing even half decent as any of the European majors, you should be fine. Um, China is one of the exceptions in the East. If China can be a real powerhouse as well, you just got to worry about the technology and you got to deal with all those weird mandate of heaven mechanics. Which actually, if you're playing as Russia, what you want is for China to implode. That makes your game so easy. Because once you get to a certain size in Russia, as Russia, the only country that can actually challenge you is China. Everybody else, you can just do what Russia did historically and sends so many men to fight them, they can't kill them all. Russia can field some of the largest armies in mid to end game, and it doesn't matter how much morale or discipline, say Prussia or France, can muster. They can't fight 200,000 Russians at once. I want to deal with these rebels before I go back to war with Novgorod. So I'll probably provoke you. One of the fun parts about playing Russia, because you don't usually get to colonize until the very late game, if you even do, is seeing how America turns out, or the Americas turn out when there's no player involved, because they usually look really weird. In the last game I played, there was British Mexico. The Spaniards took over what was the 13 colonies in our timeline. We had Dutch Canada, and the Danes got in there too with Vinland in Newfoundland and Nova Scotia. The Portuguese had California, and they almost took Alaska, but I stopped them. Alaska is really the only thing you can colonize as Russia because it's the only thing you get a port close enough to. Actually, one of the oldest Orthodox churches in North America is in Alaska, hauled over from the Russian colony on the Aleutian Islands. Um, Russian colonial policy was very different from a lot of the other European powers. And I think in part it has to do with their experience dealing with the Siberians. The Russians encouraged their people to learn the languages of the locals, to intermarry with them, because it made it easier to integrate the region into Russian civilization. Um, so it was one of the few colonies where there weren't any arbitrary laws breaking people down along racial lines. And in fact, it was encouraged to marry natives, so you could bring them into Russian culture. They did actively spread the Orthodox Church. The problem is, um, Russia being the size that it is already, and having all that empty land in Siberia, nobody really wanted to go to the New World. It was even further than Siberia, so there wasn't as much interest as there was in the rest of Europe for the New World. The Russians just didn't care as much. There were settlers, just not nearly as many as came out of England, Spain, or France. Yeah, most of the Russians who would have gone to the New World wound up going out to Siberia. Way closer, way easier to get to. Because you could still feasibly come back to Moscow from there. Good luck coming back to Moscow from Alaska. That was so far away that it was even more of a one-way trip than it was for most colonists. All right, I think we got enough manpower, and I think we've quelled enough revolts. We can gobble up a bit more of Novgorod here. Lost a general. It's fine. We'll just hire another one. Oh, we got a 2-star. That's awesome. This early in the game, 2 stars are kind of rare. You only really get 3 stars at the end of the game, unless you get an event general. Some event generals I think are 3 stars. Sometimes you'll get really lucky and you'll get a king who is exceptional. That's not the norm at all, though. They built a fort at Kargopol. I haven't seen them do that yet. Yeah, we're gonna lose what little navy we inherited from Perm, but That's another thing as Russia, you really do not have to care about the Navy at all. You are 100% a land power. That is all you do, but you're really good at it. It's sort of like the polar opposite of England, because even France has to worry about its navy at least a little bit, especially if they want to deal with Barbary pirates. But Russia, I see. In what my most recent personal game as Russia, I didn't even build a single ship until the 18th century. It was just useless because most of your trade is over land anyway. You don't really think about it. And that is kind of what Russia did historically. Russia had no navy to speak of until Peter the Great decides to build one. Because Peter the Great's whole thing was making it so Russia could compete with the rest of the world on even terms. And by the rest of the world, he meant Europe. Um, and a lot of St. Petersburg is is blatantly borrowing from the French. And I say borrowing, I mean stealing, and in some cases outdoing. Peter the Great built his summer palace in St. Petersburg specifically to outdo Versailles, which is no mean feat if you've ever been there. Versailles is one of the single most beautiful buildings on the planet. It The scale of it boggles the mind. And you think of it as somebody's house. Well, Peter the Great built two of those. He had his summer palace and his winter palace. And the summer palace had these gorgeous fountains out front that were meant to outdo the fountains in the Versailles Garden. Now, I've never been to St. Petersburg, even though I'd like to, but I have been to Versailles, and it was real wild. So, yeah, this is before electricity. So, the way those fountains worked is they had guys down in a steam room below the gardens, and they would fool with the water pressure and make more steam to produce more water pressure, but they couldn't run all the fountains at once, right? So when the king went for his walk, they would have people down up top telling people down in the boilers when the king was drawing near, to let them know that they need to start putting more pressure into this fountain or that fountain. So the king was happy on his walk and they all got to keep their jobs. I got to imagine the fountains in St. Petersburg work similarly. We got our great power status back. We joke in America about freedom fries and sort of renaming things so they're more patriotic. Well, St. Petersburg it's a German rooted name. Berg is a German suffix. But when the Germans became serious rivals to Russia, they renamed it Petrograd, which would be the Russian equivalent. That name didn't stick. It's back to St. Petersburg. But they renamed the city because they didn't like the idea of it being at all German, while the Germans were their enemies. And the wildest thing about that is the Russians invited a bunch of Germans to come settle in this region, roughly there, along the Volga River. They're called the Volga Germans, and I mean they were there until Stalin decided to kill them all, like he did. Stalin liked killing people, but no, the Volga Germans was this thriving German community living on the southern Volga River, even into the age of communism. But when the Nazis invaded, um, they kind of made overtures to the Volga Germans, and it made sense. Um, and some of the Volga Germans did help them, but Stalin kind of decided to kill all of them. So there aren't really many of them left these days. Most Germans living outside of Germany were sent back to the DDR, which doesn't mean Dance Dance Revolution. It means German Democratic Republic, by Stalin during his reign. That goes for most of the Germans who were living in Silesia and East Prussia and the Danzig corridor as well. Novgorodian rebels. I will stop training these guys. Root out that syncretism. Actually, we have Oprichniks. Let's use those. That's exactly the situation they're most meant for. And as Russia, you're going to have to deal with a lot of rebellion and instability just because most of what you're expanding into is different religion, different culture. So they're going to rebel. Well, the Oprichniks allow you to put off that rebellion until a little bit after the war when your army is in a better place to actually deal with it. Um, that's honestly probably the most, even more so than the Streltsy, is probably the most overpowered Russian ability that they gave them in the update. Brandenburg got the emperorship. That's interesting. Yeah, the Habsburgs got really good at the whole marriage game. They ran out of people to marry and started marrying themselves, and then you get people with really big chins. Gonna top off my whiskey. I'm not going with the Sexton tonight. I'm actually drinking Maker's Mark. Figured some American bourbon for a Russian run. Alright, so up next, I'm gonna try to integrate Zero, but it's probably my Diplo rep that's slowing me down here, so we're going to want to influence and probably send them a gift too. Yeah, Russia in this game is rarely short on money. The Trans-Siberian trade is very lucrative, and what you see once you start expanding into Siberia is what happened historically with Russia. They started dominating the fur trade, which was extremely lucrative during this time period. So much so that thousands upon thousands of Frenchmen went to Canada specifically for the furs. That was the main reason France established colonies in the New World was furs, not agriculture, not land, not gold, fur. Um, yeah, this the Renaissance has taken a while. Which I mean, beaver furs were worth their weight in gold in the sort of early modern era. Do I want the dip? I'll take the Diplo power because I want to tech up. You can't lose innovativeness if you don't have any, so I'm okay with being behind for now. I can catch up. I have a good heir, but he's only a year younger than my king, so we're probably not going to have him for all that long. Yeah, I'm not particularly worried about expanding southward. The hordes are always pushovers for Russia. They get behind in tech because they're a whole institution behind. They don't have feudalism at the game start, so their units are laughably weak, and they usually can't field that large of an army. And I am making enough money that I can start hiring some advisors, which ought to speed things up. Take tax modifier, Diplo rep, and I'll go with manpower. So that should allow me to integrate these guys. All right, and I will absorb the rest of Ryazan when I go to war. Well, I'll go to war with Ryazan and deal with the Great Horde at the same time. My goal with that is to get down to Astrakhan before the Ottomans really start focusing on the Caucasus region. Because early game, the Ottomans are a real pain in the ass, and we're going to want Astrakhan so we can get that trade direction. The Ottomans do get a major debuff towards the end of the game, if I remember right, although that was an earlier version of the game I remember that being in. Which is true, the Ottomans start getting significantly weaker come the 18th century. I also want to hang on to that gold so I can get the Renaissance when it finally decides to show up. I can get Defender of the Faith, but I want to save that money. And Defender of the Faith as Russia, by the end of the game, Russia's usually the only Orthodox nation. So it, with these new mechanics they added, I mean, it's a buff to your missionaries, but not much more than that. If you're the Defender of the Faith for a religion that has a lot of countries following it, it's a lot more powerful. But what can you do? Orthodoxy is such a mechanically powerful religion, it doesn't really matter anyway. And as Russia, you're almost never going to want to take your focus off of admin power because you're always going to be coring new stuff. Might as well get a claim on Ryazan while I'm waiting. Okay, we have a good king. He's 40, so he might last a while. The kings tend to last longer the further into the game you get. The danger right now is I don't have an heir. So realistically, we can probably plan on this guy being around for about another 10, 15 years. I hope. I hope. I hope this third time's the charm thing actually works and this run really gets off the ground. I mean, we're off to a good start, but I've had lots of runs go to hell once it got to this stage. Deal with these pretenders. Leave my vassal to de-occupy that territory, and we're good. Civil wars are no big deal right now. And really, the monarchy civil wars are nothing. It's most of the worst civil wars in this game are by event, and Russia doesn't really have one of those. Um, we do have the time of troubles, which we want to avoid, because Russia probably would have arisen as a world power a lot sooner had it not been for the time of troubles, which happened as a direct result of Ivan the Terrible killing his son. Um, it caused a succession crisis, and well, when those happen, it's usually not pretty. This was even less so, and it got so bad that at one point the Polish actually occupied Moscow. Um, the time of troubles it was like 50 years to a century during which Russia really couldn't do anything. I mean, the country almost ripped itself apart completely, and it's you can't really say how world history would have been very different without Russia. I'll leave it at that. As far as countries go, they have a pretty outsized influence. I will rival France. Yeah, Russia is one of those countries where if their history even changed a little bit, the world would be a very different place. Not necessarily better or worse, just different, right? I mean, they were the powerhouse in Eastern Europe for most of their history. I'll take that prestige. I don't really care what Denmark thinks of me. And we are moving up in the world. We just got to get that institution, and we should be set. We're getting there. I'll take that stability too. Thank you. RNGesus gave me 3 in a row. Thank you. All right, we have it in our territory, and we just got to get it down to Moscow. I would develop it, but I also want to tech up. I don't want to get too far behind in tech. That can kill you as Russia, especially if you get if you get very far ahead in military tech and lag in Diplo and admin, then that can ruin your playthrough because corruption will just start getting really bad. I'm almost there on both of those. There we go. Now we can get Diplo. Once I get admin, I can start putting in workshops, and then I'll start making a lot of money. That's the other thing, is Russia, you have so many resources. Workshops can give you absurd amounts of money by the end game. You can be making like 100 to 200 ducats a month before you factor in advisors and all that stuff. Speaking of, I always forget where they are. Let's see if I can get it. Nah, nothing really much better than what I got. Start focusing on these guys and build spy network. One of the other things that limits you as early game Russia is you have to deal with two diplomats instead of the three that you get if you're a kingdom or an empire, because technically you're a grand duchy, not a kingdom or an empire. Even though, as though as early before Russia really became Russia, the Grand Dukes of Moscow did claim to be the Third Rome, and that's really much more of an Eastern European legacy. There's a big divide. So, the original Roman eagle was single-headed. The Byzantines used a double-headed eagle, signifying the Second Rome. So that's the symbol that a lot of Eastern Europe associates with Rome. It's on Russia's flag. It's on Serbia's flag. Um, Poland has an eagle, but it's not a Roman eagle. It actually has to do with a Slavic founding myth that goes back to. It's a legend that along the lines of there were three brothers, Lech, Czech, and Rus. Rus was the Eastern Slavs, Russians obviously. Czech were the Czechs, and Lech was the Polish. Don't ask me how that works. Um, and when Lech found the homeland of the Polish people, he saw a brilliant white eagle sitting on a tree branch. And from that day forward, the white eagle became a symbol of Poland. Russia, the symbol of Muscovy is St. George, which is actually the same as England. Muscovy only adopts the double-headed eagle after the fall of Constantinople and after it starts looking at itself as the successor to the Roman Empire. Although historically Russia is really much more the successor to the Mongol Empire, although they probably wouldn't really like that legacy much. Um, but no, if you look at geographically what Russia controlled, sort of its role in world history as an in between East and West, Russia was much more the successor to the Mongol Empire than it was the successor to the Romans. Although you could argue through the Byzantine, the Eastern Orthodox Church, that it was really the successor of Rome because it was the successor of the imperial church. Catholicism had already splintered off and not been associated with the empire for a while, even though the Catholic Church can be seen as the last remnant of the Western Roman Empire. Because people always the Byzantine Empire wasn't a new Rome. The Byzantines looked at themselves as Romans. As far as they were concerned, they were Romans, and the kingdoms of Western Europe were a bunch of barbarians squatting on their clay. And they would get them eventually, but they never could. Um, so the Orthodox Church has also got a claim to being the Roman Church. The Catholics and the Orthodox do both. And really, it's through the Orthodox Church that Moscow claims to be the Third Rome, because it became the beating heart of the Orthodox religion after the fall of Byzantium, because there really were no other major Orthodox powers to take that throne. And Russia remains the sole Orthodox power throughout its whole history. Um, it doesn't have any real co-religionists. Like Germany has I will take the base tax. Like Germany has the Nordic countries and Denmark and the Netherlands and England as its Protestant brethren. France has Spain and Italy and Austria to a degree. Russia's over here in the east alone as the sole Orthodox power, though. There were plenty of Orthodox Christians throughout the world. It's just they were all occupied by other powers. I mean, the Ottomans were occupying most of the Orthodox world, aside from Russia. And I mean, they were exceptionally brutal as far as overlords go. I mean, the Ottomans liked to take Orthodox boys and raise them as janissaries and separate them from their families permanently. Um, it was horrible, but Russia remained as this shining beacon of the Orthodox faith up until the Communist Revolution, because Moscow was the most powerful Orthodox city that wasn't under the control of another country. That said, the Patriarch of Constantinople did survive because there were a huge number of Greeks that remained in the city, as well as Smyrna in modern day Turkey, and the Ottoman sultans needed to keep them under control because they relied on a lot of those Greeks, at least in the early days, for the administration of the empire. So it wouldn't work out very well for them if they decided to just destroy the religion because they would piss off the people they're relying on. So the patriarch did survive. He just wasn't really as powerful as he once was. And the patriarch of Moscow became the de facto leader of orthodoxy during the Russian Empire. I said orthodoxy was far from the only religion in the Russian Empire. As I said, they were incredibly diverse. Most of Central Asia remained Muslim. You have a bunch of Catholics and Protestants in the West, and you even have some Buddhists far out east. But the Russians were pretty good at giving them all autonomy, so they remained pretty under control, all things considered. I believe the phrase used during Nicholas II's reign was an iron fist in a velvet glove. It sounds goofy, but it actually kind of worked in practice. Um, so long as you paid your taxes to Moscow, the Tsar would kind of leave you alone. Almost got it. I need to get this institution, and then we can get going. That's the main reason I'm falling behind is the lack of the Renaissance institution, which, I mean, the Renaissance didn't even really get to France and England until the 16th century. Largely stayed in Italy until the end of the 15th. What's going on? Oh, wow, the Great Horde's doing pretty well. They usually get gobbled up at this point, but it looks like they're going to take some of Kazan over. Just fine with me as long as they're fighting each other, they're not fighting me. And there goes my king. We didn't have him for as long as I hoped, but I mean, he's not terrible. We're going to be behind on Diplo, but that's fine, I guess. We got good admin. That's something. What's going on in Sweden? Oh, Noble Rebellion. Nothing too interesting. Need this institution. I got no choice but to start developing it at this point because I need it. Alright, one more. I need it. SpongeBob reference. Alright, there we go. Okay, now we're cooking with fire. Shouldn't be too long now. Yeah, I don't care about you, Livonian Order. I will just let the Danes absorb you. I mean, I'm gonna conquer it eventually anyway. I can actually probably expand my military while I'm waiting. Alright, there we go. We got some cannons now, too, which will make our sieges go much faster. We're going to want to attack, and we're going to want to polish off Novgorod very soon. Once I've got my military built up, I'll deal with what's left of them. We've almost got Rostov taken care of. Alright, get that prestige. We only got one vassal left. We've got Novgorod and Ryazan, and then we should be sitting pretty. And honestly, by the time I end tonight around 10:30, um, we'll have pretty much the core of Russia unified, which will be a pretty good place to leave off. One of the problems with playing Russia is attrition for your own men, because what you'll find is you can build huge armies, but you don't have much place to put them. Because you won't have many provinces that can support that large of an army. Alright, there we go. We can get our second idea group. And with Russia, you don't really have to go for quantity ideas. Russian ideas are quantity ideas. So I usually take defensive for the morale boost, and the attrition kind of plays very nicely into, well, how Russia usually plays. But the morale boost is the main thing I like there. Because with Russia, you have no problem getting max absolutism, so you don't really need to take offensive for the extra discipline. You can just take defensive and quality. And yeah, defensive and quality is a good combination for Russia. Because you really don't have to worry about quantity. You'll have manpower out the ass one way or the other. Blow that up. Although that said, if you do take quantity as Russia, you will have just impossibly large armies. It's just at that point, I prefer to have higher quality troops because you'll be able to outnumber anybody as Russia, but you'll want some higher quality for your troops if you want them to actually be useful. All right, let's absorb Novgorod, take their money. All right, gonna be a little bit before I can core that, but we can take this, get that free development. Now all we got to worry about is Yaroslavl and Ryazan, and we'll have all of Russia's core integrated. And then we can start looking outwards, really. Once that happens, we can start expanding into the Great Horde, because at that point we should have been able to take some religious ideas so we can start converting that land. Because the problem is you can take it, but you have to convert it or it'll destroy your religious unity. And we really can't convert anything just yet. I don't care what Kazan thinks of me. We can go with that. Okay, we're only behind on Diplo now. We're way ahead on military tech, which is great. And we're about where we gotta be with admin, which is fine. You want to keep up with admin as Russia because of this new governing capacity mechanic. It really limits what Russia can do unless it keeps up with that. Like, I'm already way over governing capacity, so I need that as soon as I can get it. But all we got left is Yaroslav and Ryazan, and we'll be in a pretty good place. We might even be able to wage a war against the Great Horde, expand south to the Volga. But my focus right now, unify the core of Russia, and then you can start striking out from it. And that's empire building 101. If you want a secure empire, you need a secure place to attack from. I mean, the Byzantines learned this the hard way when they lost control of Anatolia. Anatolia protected the core of the Byzantine Empire and allowed them to punch outward from it. Once they lost Anatolia, they were always on the defensive. They didn't have any land that held itself, really, or they didn't have any real defensive territory that separated their capital from their enemies. So they were always on the defensive and couldn't attack outward. You see this with successful empires, with few exceptions, where the first thing they have to do is consolidate a home region to strike out from. I mean, the Romans are perhaps the prime example of this, where they really couldn't get much traction until they'd unified Italy. But once they had unified Italy, then they start expanding very fast. Um, Russia went kind of the same way. Once the core of Russia was unified, they didn't have to worry too much about internal threats, and they could strike out from it. And that's when Russia starts expanding fast. Poland is one of those exception countries. They got their empire through a royal marriage, really, and Poland has no defensive territory to strike out from. That's why they didn't expand much. Really, Poland peaked early in its imperial history. They got the Commonwealth together, and then they couldn't. And then most of the history of the Commonwealth was slowly losing it to invaders. And again, the problem really was Poland's geography. Geography really determines a lot of history. It's why the U.S. is such a powerhouse. Um, it's why Russia was a powerhouse in its day. You can't control that much land and not be. But Russia's greatest weakness was Russia's a weird country geographically. It's mostly flat. So historically, Russia's geographical goals were to anchor its geography to mountain ranges and seas. So, we see the core of Russia is a large flat plain. Historically, the Russian emperors wanted to expand southward to the Caspian, the Caucasian mountains, the Black Sea, and the Carpathian mountains to protect their core with geographical boundaries. And this holds true farther east too, with the Tian Shan Mountains. Russia needed to expand into those mountains and hold them to protect the core of its empire because once you got past those mountains, it was largely flat. The Urals were the only real mountains in internal Russia that you had to worry about. The entire rest of the country was just flat plains and rolling hills, not that difficult to invade. So you kind of get an idea of why the Russians had to be belligerent historically to survive. It's because they were left with no other option. If you can't be defensive, your only option is to be offensive. It's why the Germans behaved the way they did in the 19th and 20th centuries. They really couldn't defend because Germany has a similar problem. It's all a flat plain, but they don't have the unlimited Siberian territory to fall back into. Um, so they had to be offensive if they were going to survive as a country. And I mean, Russia's the same way, just as an even more extreme example. The only way Russia was going to survive and become a power is if they attacked rather than defended. Because once Russia was on the defensive, they had to rely on the Russian winter to do their job for them, and that usually worked, but it came at a great cost. I mean, the Russian winter slowed the Germans down, but the Russians took huge numbers of losses in that war. How am I losing so much money? Am I over my force limit? No. Hmm. Weird. I'll figure it out. I will take that burger loyalty. And yeah, I can take that military idea. Got that free. I think it's not going to matter much because we're going to go to war with them. But let me mothball my forts. Yeah, this Queen Regency is killing me right now. I can get more admin when my heir comes of age. I'll lose some Diplo, but I need that admin. As Russia makes admin power even more important than it is for pretty much every other country in this game. Because Russia's one of those few countries that is expanding pretty much all the time. I mean, not that it matters. The age of discovery is almost over. Protestantism showed up early. Wow. Where's the sinners? Looks like we're not going to have a strong Reformation this game. It looks like some of them have already been converted out, and there's only one Protestant state. Huh. That's interesting. I got some Novgorodian separatists. Yes, Protestantism, the Protestant Reformation usually goes one of two ways. Either it takes over all of Catholic Europe, or it's pitiful. It rarely follows what it did historically, which is it remains relatively localized to Germany. And I mean, southern France had its issues with the Huguenots, but I don't really care about naval tradition. Anyway, they had their issues with the Huguenots, but the only places where Protestantism really stuck were northern Germany, the Baltic states, and the Nordic states, and England, and the Low Countries. But sometimes in this game, you see Protestant Spain, which doesn't sound right, does it? It's weird, but yeah. This other times you see Catholic Germany. Well, I've never actually seen Germany form, but you see a lot of Catholic German states. And I should be able to integrate this guy soon. Yep, there we go. And that'll be the last of my territories I need to integrate. Can't figure out why I'm losing money. Oh, I'm rooting out corruption. That's why. That's fine. I will lose that eventually. And what do we got here? I always go with administrative clergy. Why wouldn't you? Because you get a free policy, and that's just a free buff. Why wouldn't you just take that? There's That's one of the ones where there really is no other option. Like it's just one of the government reforms is clearly better than the rest. The noble reform is kind of like that. The extra tax rate is way better than the other. I forget what the other one option is. You get a national manpower modifier, but that early in the game, it might be worth it. But I like the tax modifier. All right, I'm gonna provoke these. Should be able to deal with it pretty quickly. Okay. And then we got that claim on Ryazan. What's going on in Europe? Poland is looking kind of beefy. That might be a problem. Brandenburg is the emperor. That's interesting. You, Austria usually has it throughout. Um, yeah, that's weird. Well, the HRE should look interesting later this game. All right. Getting there on admin and Diplo. Getting there. But I should be able to get that morale buff pretty soon. All right, there we go. We got our new ruler. We're gonna have to go to war with the Great Horde, but we were gonna have to do that anyway. Let's go straight for their capital. I'll execute him. Kill the guy. Oh, the Crimeans. Okay, I'm gonna let the Crimeans go. I don't want them taking the capital. Yeah, I will let the Great Horde come up and deal with those Crimeans. Um, I'm gonna be focusing on. I would like to get down to, well, the Russians would call it Tsaritsyn, but sure. Come on, Circassia, help me out. The good thing about the territory you're expanding into as Russia is it's cheap to conquer. Most of these provinces are very low development, so it's not going to kill your admin to annex them. Really, some of the richest provinces you take as Russia are from the very beginning of the game. All right. Oh, they're at war with Nagai too. Huh. Let me see if I can piece these guys out. Not quite. Do I stay at war with them? Yeah, I'll stay at war with them. If I carpet occupy, I might be able to. Oh, no, you don't. There we go. Gotcha. Yeah, we're gonna need religious ideas before we can start dealing with that anyway. All right, that is the core of Russia, more or less unified. Just got to get Ryazan. Oh, we got that churches, which is nice. All right, let's see what we're dealing with. Go to war with those guys. Oh, got rebels. I'll let the Circassians do their thing there. Deal with the rebels up north. Local defensiveness. Nice little buff, I guess. Yeah, I'll take some money from them. The rate I'm losing it, I need it. These guys might have put me over my force limit anyway, so I'll destroy them. Alright. Should be able to piece out the Great Horde separately. Yep. Let me also take... I can't take that much money. There we go. Get some money out of that deal. A few extra provinces. Yeah, as I said, these are pretty darn cheap to annex. And then I will take the last of Ryazan. And that is the core of Russia united. Beautiful. Or as one of my favorite YouTubers would say, Bliatiful. Life of Boris is a great YouTube channel and you should check it out. Great Russian cooking recipes. And that's one thing. People don't usually think of Russia and food in the same sentence, but Russian food is delicious. You don't know what you haven't lived until you've had chicken Kiev. It is wonderful. It's you've heard of fried chicken. Well, this is chicken fried butter. You basically just take a ball of butter, herbed butter with like dill and parsley, and you wrap chicken around it, and then you fry that, and it's wonderful. Yeah, you need to produce an heir, my dude. Yeah, and then once you've fried it for like a minute, you bake it, and the butter, like, it seasons the inside of the chicken. Really, if you go make chicken Kiev, it is a really good recipe. It's not that expensive to make either. Most expensive thing really is the chicken. The rest of it's pretty basic. It's just butter and some basic herbs. It is time consuming, I will say. It is time consuming to make that, but it's worth it. It's very good. Do I want the Theodoro? Well, they drove out the Genoans, so I will take that alliance, Theodoro. Okay, what are we doing here? Yeah, as you can see, we're slowly losing the strength of the Orthodox religion simply because there aren't going to be that many countries. Let me consecrate some metropolitans, which is another Orthodox mechanic that allows you to get some patriarch authority, which is what the whole religion kind of uses as its internal currency. If you're Russia, you can eventually get ahead in tech. It's just hard to do. And you have to have some luck with your monarchs. Alright. I should be able to mothball my forts and be making money again. There we go. There we go. Let me build some of those. Some workshops. And a church. Should help. Get that admin. Use the Oprichniks until I'm ready. And yeah, so we are already the number 4 world power. We have our core secure. And once we get down to Astrakhan, then we can start focusing on the Lithuanians and the Danes slash Swedes. Once we form Russia, then we'll start worrying about the Uzbeks, which are back here. But you don't really bump into them as Russia until you start expanding eastward. Occasionally, Kazan or Nogai will ally with them, but the Uzbeks aren't any trouble at all. Alright, should be able to start converting. Alright, tech up. We're pretty much where we gotta be with Russia. I'll just get a new advisor. In fact, I'll take this morale boost because it'll give me that national tax modifier as well. And see, I like this mod. It gives you different advisor portraits. This is literally just Vladimir Putin in an eye patch, and I love it. All right, we're back to making good money. We're in a happy place right now. Turns out RNGesus prefers Russia to Britain. So our next target for expansion down here, the Great Horde. Oh, Norway is declaring independence. I'll help them out. So our next target for expansion down here is the Great Horde, which is in the 15th and 16th centuries the last surviving successor state to the Mongols in the west. This used to be the Golden Horde, and it used to control a whole lot more territory, but over time it started falling apart like most of the Mongol Empire. And the Mongols are really the great exception as far as empires go, right? They they don't have any urban core from which they expand. They are nomads, which are also not typically big empire builders. Um, they violate pretty much every rule of empire building, but they didn't give a shit because Genghis Khan didn't give a shit. He's one of those like giga chads throughout history who has an outsized influence as an individual. Did you know that there's 5% of all people on the planet today are direct descendants of Genghis Khan, and every single day is the birthday of one of Genghis Khan's descendants. Uh, he's sort of like Charlemagne's a bit like that for Europe. If you have any amount of German, French, or Lowlands descent, there's a decent chance you're related to Charlemagne through the Carolingians in there somewhere. Just like if you're from one of the territories of the eastern part of the Mongol Empire, there's a decent chance you're a direct descendant of Genghis Khan. Wait, is Poland? Poland might be going reformed. That is weird. Okay, now we got some centers of reformation. And we're converting. And the Lithuanians will almost inevitably convert all this territory to Catholic. You're going to have to reconvert it, but you get a claim on it, and it's the right culture for you. So it all evens out. All right, I think Kazan is next. All right, they're allied with Chagtai. And you know what? I will take Defender of the Faith now because I have the money. And we'll pretty much hang on to that until the end of the game because we have no contenders, really. There aren't any other Orthodox nations that can really do that. Yeah, I think we're the only one aside from Theodoro. Right, so we're the defender of the Orthodox faith and the only follower of the Orthodox faith. Uh, oh, we got Athens. Athens all the way down here. Are you guys still surviving? Yeah, you are. How are you? All right, you're ally. Okay, you got Genoa. That might keep him alive for a little while. Every once in a while, that'll happen. You know, one time I saw the Byzantines survive just down here on the Peloponnese to the end of the game. I don't know why the Ottomans never killed them off. They just didn't. And it was incredible. And I think towards the end of the game, I was kind of bored. If I remember right, that was a Germany run, and I just decided to help the Byzantines out. So I helped them take a bunch of territory back, but it was wild. I had never seen the Byzantines last that long on their own. I mean, hell, even as a player, I can't make them last that long. Yeah, I'll let the Great Horde deal with those rebels, and I'll deal with these guys. Ottomans have... Okay, who have they attacked? Okay, they're going to war with Austria. It's to be expected. I'll probably will ally Austria at some point. They're useful for Russia to have. Mostly because they kind of allow you to sandwich Poland, especially if they form the Commonwealth. And is that... Oh, the Teutonic Order's hanging on by their fingertips here. But the Danes have absorbed the Baltic. I don't care what the Great Horde thinks of me. Let me use my Streltsy here. I should be able to get all Streltsy infantry. Alright, for one army, I have all Streltsy infantry. Let me send these guys here. And I'll take these three. Those are the wrong three. These three. Send them up to my army here at Neva. And delete those. Alright, we are sitting pretty for this Russia run. It's going much better than the England run, Ruz. Don't want to pay for those. I have been told I could go for a more interesting game. I get that staring at a map isn't all that thrilling for a lot of people. I mean, history geeks like me love it, but I'm not everybody. I was thinking of doing maybe a Total War game. That way you could see like live battles. Um, I have most of the old ones. I would love to be able to do a Total War Attila, but it won't run on my current computer. Um, Total War Attila is set in the time period I'm talking about for the main series of the podcast, but such is life. All right, we'll take this missionary strength, and that should allow us to... Yep, there we go. We can start converting this, which means we can now start expanding south with impunity. Because again, this is all Muslim. We're going to need to convert it if we want to actually function. Otherwise, it'll destroy our religious unity, and we'll have rebels out the ass. While we're doing that, gonna expand into Kazan. Might be able to reach the Volga tonight, which would be awesome. Oh, what the hell is going on here? How did that happen? Oh, the Castilians are waging an offensive war. We might see a weak France this game. Every once in a while, France will have a really bad run. It's usually good for the entire rest of Western Europe, and usually it allows Spain to get a lot stronger. I'm really surprised they haven't gone to war over Gibraltar yet. But then again, Portugal is allied with England, and England's doing pretty well this run. Circassians have sent us a gift for some reason. Alright, let's see if we can take some provinces off the Kazan. Probably will be my last war of the night. I will take the extra development. Always want to take the extra development. Alright. We are going to be sitting pretty tonight, I think. Yeah, we'll let those 1,000-man armies through. Then the damage they can do is relatively limited. I wouldn't be able to besiege any of our real major forts. And once we take these, they won't be able to send them in anyway. Worst case scenario, I'll hire some mercenaries at my capital and deal with them. Actually, that sounds like a good idea. We train some mercenaries up here. It's gonna cost me, but loans are loans. I'll take some out. Oh, we lost a general. Are they gonna defeat the mercenaries? Of course they are. It's okay. They won't be able to hurt anything too. They got 6,000 men, but eh, damage they can do is pretty limited. All right, fight the Chagtai or not. All right, fight them at Novgorod. I will take that Diplo power. Thank you very much. These mercenaries are garbage. All right, I'm sending my men up there. Yeah, these mercenaries suck. Nothing like the mercenary companies of CK2. Those guys are great. See if I can take anything from them. I'll keep fighting. You guys go away. I don't need you. Lousy mercenaries. They are nothing compared to what you get in Crusader Kings 2. CK2, you can win the game with just mercenaries. They're great. Especially if you're playing one of the richer kingdoms. I do like CK3, but I think some integration of some CK2 features would help it out. Um, I think it's missing some of the weirdness you got in CK2. Like CK2, you get some weird shit happening. You can be literally a Unix Satanist, horse even, if you want to get exceptionally strange. Yes, CK2 is fun. I will pay that money and take the corruption because I don't want to lose my stability. I'll let the Chagtai go then. See, one of my favorite CK2 games, I was playing as the Queen of England possessed by the ghost of her evil great grandfather. That's the kind of weird shit you get in CK2. But yeah, no, CK3 lacks it. I think to the game's deficit. The weird shit made it funny. You could be a werewolf in CK2. You could be an immortal Satanist weirdo. Um, really, that alone is what makes CK2 worth playing. Is the weird? It's this fun combination of historical strategy game and RPG. Um, and it lets you do just the weirdest crap. Um, there's one game where I decided I was going to play as the immortal King of Scotland, and I just sat up there immortal. You can get weird. Worth playing, definitely. And we're gonna lose that battle. Let's see if we can peace out. Kind of tired of this war. Maybe we can take one or two more provinces. Yeah, take some of the border provinces. I'm gonna need to beef up my forts, I think, and probably go to war with the Great Horde once or twice more. Especially because they are allied with Chagtai out here. Might be worth forming Russia before I go messing with them, because that way I can get my Siberian frontiers out there. Granted, I have seen some crazy shit in EU4 too. One of my favorite strategies that I've seen is playing as Russia. You colonize the New World, and then you move your capital to the New World, which allows you to use the Siberian frontiers ability in the New World. So you can basically set up the Russian Empire in North America. Because Siberian Frontiers is a hilariously overpowered ability. If there's an open province anywhere on the same continent as your capital, or with a direct province connection to your capital, you can just send a free colonist there. It doesn't cost you anything, and you don't get any native revolts. So it is ridiculously OP, and it actually makes Russia one of the most powerful colonial nations in the game. Hmm. Yeah, I don't like getting involved in other people's fights. Losing some of our prominence to England because of the institution. But it is what it is. We'll get it eventually. It's starting to show up. That's the thing is, colonialism has to come through a port, and if you're Russia, you only really have one port early in the game, and that's what will one day be St. Petersburg. So you get a little delayed with that, but the printing press should show up fairly quickly for us. We have a Queen of the People. Alright, truce with Great Horde is expired. We can tech up. Nice. Yeah, we have no innovativeness, but that's fine. Uh, we're at least keeping pace. That's what's important with Russia. You're never really going to be a leader with them. You just got to keep pace. You don't want to let your rivals get too far ahead of you, particularly in military tech, because then you're just going to get destroyed. Train some additional cannons. Thank you for turning out for it. I'm glad you liked it. I won't be on for that much longer, but I am doing another stream on Tuesday, a multiplayer stream with one of my subscribers here. EU4 again, but Tuesday night at 8. Check it out. And there we have it, the worst event in EU4. There is absolutely nothing you can do other than take the stability hit. Um, the fun thing here, though, is this last one, O Comet, the Devil's Kith and Kin. That's actually a Scottish poem that they borrowed it from. But Yeah, this is still when astrology was kind of a thing that countries would actually base policy off of. Imagine Biden making political decisions on horoscopes. That'd be a fun time. All right, we got some separatists up in Perm. Really, it's out here. And some Kazani separatists. Let's send you guys out there. Yep, we're gonna have to take that stability hit. I'm gonna have to boost it. I don't like letting stability get that low. Gonna provoke both of these just so I can clear them. All right, that's that taken care of. Get you guys up here. Okay, pretty good start, if I do say so myself. Well, third start. Rest of Europe's looking interesting. This France is they're in trouble. Um, don't know how that's going to shake out, but it looks like England is absorbing parts of Burgundy. That's weird. Um, Austria's doing all right. This is shaping up to be an interesting game. What's going on here? Oh, there go the Ottomans. They're finally eating Egypt. This is the first time I've actually seen them do that. I mean, that's bad for me. That's going to make the Ottomans more powerful. But in these new patches, that is one of the first times I've actually seen the Ottomans take over Egypt. Which is good historically, because, I mean, that was a significant portion of the Ottoman Empire. It was like a third of it. But yeah, that's the first time I've actually seen that happen in these recent patches. The Ottomans really got nerfed, but hey, this game they're doing all right. Of course, it's the one game that I'm gonna have to fight them later, but I'll just have to wait until the 18th century to do that because the Ottomans get a huge debuff. I'll take the production hit and get the Cossacks. And yeah, 1520 was when Russia, I think if I remember right, I might be wrong, was when they were in the throes of the time of troubles. So there were several famines during it because the country was just a mess. All right, what are we doing here? Yeah, we want to tech up. I will take the next religious idea when it comes though. And we're about to get, oh, not about to get. Colonialism is growing. It's going to take a little while. But I think we're in a good place for the night, so I am going to call it. Thank you for turning out for the stream, everybody. And if you're free on Tuesday night, I'm going to be doing a stream with one of my listeners, their subscribers. I am Batman, and he has a number of numbers after his name. I can't remember that off the top of my head, but we're going to be doing a multiplayer stream on Tuesday, so tune out for that. It should be fun. All right, have a great night, everybody, and have a good week coming up. I'm Renegade of